بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. The first verse I'm going to recite to you is from chapter 5, Al-Ma'idah, and it's verse 119. قال الله هذا يوم ينفع الصادقين صدقهم لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها أبدا رضي الله عنهم ورضوا عنه ذلك الفوز العظيم. Allah will say, this is a day when their truth will profit the truthful ones. For them are gardens wherein rivers flow, abiding therein forever. Allah is well pleased with them, and they are well pleased with Allah. This is a great achievement. Next verse I want to recite is from chapter 9, verse 119. Ya ayyuhallazina amanu taqullaha wa kunu ma'as-sadiqin. O you who believe, keep your duty to Allah and be with the truthful. Sadaqallahu al-aliyyul azim. And I also want to draw your attention to a hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, where he said, speak the truth even when it is bitter. And this is what a Muslim should do. You don't have to abuse other people and then say, oh, well, I always speak the truth and so on. You can put it in a nice way, but you should always speak the truth. And the important thing about the first verse I recited from chapter 5, verse 119, is that this relates to when on the day of judgment Jesus will be asked, did you ask your followers to take you as a God besides Allah? And Jesus will say, no, I didn't. And towards the description of this incident at the end, this is the verse. That this is the day when the truth will profit the truthful ones. And so on. Now you see, the Holy Prophet said, speak the truth even when it is bitter. Of course, when we say to our Christian friends that Jesus wasn't part of Godhead, he wasn't the Son of God, he did not die on the cross, etc., then this is a bitter truth for them to swallow. Although, of course, there are Christian sects like the Unitarians who believe that Jesus was just a prophet and nothing more than that. And I mention Christians because we live in a Christian majority country, but you can mention any religious group, any religion, because it's easy to finger point and poke fun at people. Oh, look, you believe so and so, how silly is that belief? And not all the beliefs are based on what Allah revealed. Many are based on mistranslations, interpolation, and so on. Again, to give an example, the Old Testament says that a young girl will bear a son. And this is translated or mistranslated as a virgin will bear a son. Now, the two things are not synonymous, but that's a different story. Let's take an example from politics. By giving this example, I'm showing my age. This relates to the Cuban Missile Crisis, when Americans and Russians almost came to war because Russians were installing missiles and so on in Cuba. And what the Americans used to do was that they would send flights over Cuba. Basically, they were spy flights to see what was going on, what was happening, because this crisis was taking a very serious turn, and Americans wanted to know, the situation in Cuba itself. And these flights, they would photograph Cuba, and then they would go back to the mainland, and those photographs would be developed and passed on to the Joint Chiefs of Staff and so on, who will, and analysts will explain to them, this shows this shows that, and so on. And one day, when these photographs were shown to the Chiefs of Staff, they couldn't stop laughing, because it showed that on a Air Force airbase in Cuba, on the runway, the planes are all lined up next to each other. And I mean, the reason was obvious, that if there is an attack, if there's alarm, then the planes are there. The first one will take off, and then that will be followed by the second one and third one, and so on and so forth. But of course, those who lined up the planes that way didn't consider this, that if an American bomber comes over and destroys the first few planes, explosions for them will destroy all the other planes. And even if they don't destroy the planes, the wreckage from the planes that are destroyed will make the runway useless. And while the Chiefs of Staff were laughing at the Russian stupidity, someone said, hang on, let's send up a plane over our own airfields, over our own air bases, and see what formation our fighters and bombers and things are lined up in. So they sent up a plane that took photographs of American bases and plane formations, and they developed the photographs, and they looked at them, and guess what? The American planes were lined up in exactly the same formation as the Russian ones. And that's the point I'm making, that it's very easy to look at other people's errors, mistakes, whatever you want to call them, and finger point and laugh and make fun. But a positive thing to do would be to look at your own self, your own community, to see what you are doing. And this is why reformers come. They ask people to look at themselves, their own beliefs, their own behavior, rather than just finger point and poke fun at other communities. Reflect on their own beliefs and their own actions, and try and see how others see them. And that was the point about the political example that, it's a real incident that I gave you. And of course, when Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the promised Messiah, ﷺ, pointed this out, that Muslims are wrong at this point and that point and that point, Muslims got very upset. And they started abusing him and calling him a heretic and a kafir and etc. And they started saying, our ancestors had believed this, and we believed it for 1400 years. Now you're telling us that we are wrong, etc. Actually, the interesting thing is that this is exactly what the Quraysh of Makkah said to the Holy Prophet Muhammad. We've been believing these things, we've been doing these things for hundreds of years. Who are you to come along and tell us that our beliefs are wrong and our actions are wrong? And what I want to do is to actually relate this to what's happened in India, where we know that two BJP spokespersons who are virulently anti-Muslim made comments that have upset the Muslims, and many Muslim countries have acted in the appropriate way by protesting and so on and so forth. But what I also want to do is to invite you to let us look at ourselves, how contradictory our own beliefs are, how we say one thing and we do another thing. For example, I believe that the protests and so on were caused by this lady making, in very abusive language, referring to the incident related in Muslim books, where it is said that the Holy Prophet Muhammad entered into a nikah with Hazrat Aisha when she was 6 and married her when she was 9. Now, our organization, starting with the promised Messiah alayhi salam, has been saying for the last 100 years that most of the attacks upon Islam and the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad are based on things which are said in Muslim histories. You know, Muslims get very upset when I say, for example, that Tabari has written this in his history of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, in his seerah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why do people get upset? Tabari wasn't a prophet. He didn't receive revelation from God to say that, what to write in the seerah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. He was a human being. He went to great lengths to try and find authentic and genuine incidents about the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallam, and then compile a book. But he was a human being. He was working several hundred years after the Holy Prophet Muhammad had passed away. And, what happens is that stories change in telling. Compilers of hadith, they took great care in compiling these books like Bukhari and Muslim and so on. But you can't get away from the fact that these were compiled a long time after the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there may be things in them which are not correct. Why? Because maybe the original person didn't hear what the Holy Prophet Muhammad was saying, didn't hear it correctly. Or if he heard it, he misunderstood it. Then when he passed on to the next one, he passed on his understanding which was incorrect. Maybe the person he passed it on to didn't remember all the words. Maybe some of the words got changed. And he passed it on to a third person. Now, if you read the books of hadith, it is, they start with the so-and-so said, that so-and-so said, that so-and-so said, that so-and-so said that a companion of the Holy Prophet, like Hazrat Umar Razila Ta'ala or Hazrat Abu Bakr, said that the Holy Prophet said. So there's a chain of narration of about 5 people going back to the Holy Prophet. And this is being put in writing 200 years after the Holy Prophet has passed away. So there is evident scope that somewhere along the line there was some misunderstanding. Someone didn't hear things correctly. Let's take the example of the Holy Prophet's marriage to Hazrat Aisha. As we know that Holy Prophet Muhammad married Hazrat Khatija radiallahu ta'ala at the age, he was 25, the Holy Prophet, and Hazrat Khatija was 40. She had been widowed twice and had children from her previous marriages, and he married. And that marriage lasted a very long time. He married at the age of 25, and he proclaimed prophethood at the age of 40, as Khadija was still alive, and so on. Anyway, Hazrat Khadija dies. She passes on, and all the burden falls upon the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Earning a living, looking after children. Hazrat Fatma was there in the household. Hazrat Ali was there as well, and doing his duties as a prophet and so on. One day he met a lady whose name escapes me at the moment, and she suggested that he has too much to do, and listen to her words, that he should remarry so that he has someone who can help him look after the house and look after the children in the house. Now, we are told that Hazrat Aisha radiallahu ta'ala came into the household as the Holy Prophet's wife at the age of 9. Hazrat Fatma then was 14 or 15. How was a 9-year-old girl going to look after a 15-year-old girl? And Hazrat Ali as well. Nowadays, we have 23-year-old graduates who don't know how to cook and clean. How was a 9-year-old girl going to cook and clean and do everything else for the whole household? I mean, the logic does not make sense. And Hazrat, this lady goes to Hazrat Abu Bakr and says, and asks for a match, her hand in marriage to the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And Hazrat Abu Bakr says, well, Aisha is already engaged, and I'm going to go and ask the people to whom she is engaged, when can we have the send-off, as it's called, rukhsati, so that the girl can go to her husband's house. Please, someone explain to me, if Hazrat Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala is saying, I'm going to go and talk to the people to whom she is engaged, when is rukhsati, when is the send-off going to take place? At what age was she entered into this engagement? When she was born, when she was 2 years old? And if she is only 6, is he going to marry her off and send her off at the age of 6? Rationality is something, logic is something. Somewhere along the line, there has been a mistake in relating this incident. And our Jamaat has done research and so on. We took the point that we don't know when Hazrat Aisha was born, but we know when she died. So let's work back from that. Because we know so many years before she passed away, this incident happened. And so many years before that, this happened. And so many years before that, that happened. And the age minimum age, working backwards from the date of death when she could have been married, was 19. And because there is some doubt of a few months about when some incidents happened, some people say she was actually 21, which would make sense. But just because this truth is bitter for people to hear, because they have such a reverence for the people who wrote these stories down, it doesn't mean to say that we should not speak it. These books of history and so on, they are not God's revelation. The only revelation from God is the Holy Quran. That is the only thing we cannot challenge. Its understanding we can challenge. But to say that all these books, the knowledge that they have, cannot be contested, is to raise the writings of those people to the word of God. And this is incorrect. And there are many other beliefs and things, where we need to go back and look at the history of the whole thing and reevaluate. I don't say that because this doesn't happen in the West or that doesn't happen in the West and so on, we should do that. No. For the sake of correctness, does it make sense? Is it logical? Etc., etc. And there is another hadith of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, which says, when your brother does something right, support him, and then if he does something wrong, support him. And the companions Radhiyallahu ta'ala were amazed, and they said, "O Prophet of Allah, if he is doing something wrong, how do we support him?" And the Holy Prophet said, by telling him that he is doing the wrong thing and trying to stop it. As long as we keep on treating the texts created by human beings as if they cannot be challenged, and they have such incidents mentioned in those books, we'll keep on subjecting the person of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to such attacks. It's the bitter truth that we are also responsible for these things. It is hard to hear, but unless we hear it and we understand it and we address the issues, we are protesting today, we'll be protesting next year or in 5 years' time or 10 years' time or even in 100 years' time, and we wouldn't have moved forward at all. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quranil Azim wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikril hakim innahu ta'ala jawadun karimun malikun ar-raufur rahim. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udzu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم، واخذل من خذل دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. عباد الله رحمكم الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. واذكروا الله يذكركم وادعوه يستجب لكم ولذكر الله أكبر والله يعلم ما تصنعون. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. Hayya ala salah, hayya ala falah, qad qamatis salah, qad qamatis salah. Allahu Akbar, la ilaha illallah. Allahu Akbar. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahmanir Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانهر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده.
ربنا
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. قل يا أيها الكافرون لا أعبد ما تعبدون ولا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد ولا أنا عابد ما عبدتم فلا أنتم عابدون ما أعبد لكم دينكم ولي دين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده.
ربنا.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله. الله أكبر. التحيات لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أستغفر الله أستغفر الله أستغفر الله. اللهم أنت السلام ربنا آتنا في الدنيا. Thank you for joining us for our Friday service. Our next broadcast is tomorrow at 1 o'clock, when we'll be broadcasting on Pure Discussions, which is a WhatsApp group. And we hope we'll see you there. If not, then we have our usual Tadabbarul Quran and reflections on the Holy Quran. And I hope we'll see you there. In the meantime, with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you may be, may Allah keep the whole of humanity under His protection and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.